Assalamu alaikum, brother Aisa.
Alaikum assalam.
What is your original name?
Richard Belial.
What's that?
Richard Belial. My original name was Richard Belial.
How you spell it?
Belisle.
Mm-hmm. Where are you from, brother?
I'm from Belize, Central America.
Where is Belize exactly? Can you tell me?
It's a little bit to the south of Mexico and to the east of Guatemala.
What is the original roots of people there?
There are many mixtures of people there. The country was a colony of England for a few hundred years, up until 1981. And there are many people of English descent. There are people that have descended from Africans. There are people that have descended from the Indians, the Mayans that used to live there. And there's also many Spanish people that have come from the surrounding countries of Guatemala, Honduras, El Salvador, and many of the other countries of Central America.
What's the weather there?
It's very warm. Most of the year it's like 90 degrees, 100 degrees in the summer.
Okay, because it is like in the equator.
It's close to the equator.
Very close to the equator. Meaning it's tropical.
Yes, it's tropical.
Okay. Do you born here or you born in Belize?
I was born in Belize.
Okay. How long you been in the state?
I've been living in New York since 1977 for about 24 years.
With your parents?
Yes, with my mother.
Okay. And when you start getting to know Islam?
The first thing I really heard about Islam through was when I read the autobiography of Malcolm X when I was in college. I read that, and I read about his conversion from the Nation of Islam to the real Islam, which is the Islam that I know now.
How many years is that?
That was about 9 years ago.
9 years ago. How old are you?
I'm 28 years old.
28 years old. Now, can you tell me step by step how you go to progress from reading a book until today? Can you give me like a summary of you in 9 years?
Sure. It was a very long process. But when I first read that book, it gave me some idea that Islam was a very beautiful religion, that all races, all different colors and people from all over the world all worship together and were accepted together. That was one of the first ideas I got from Islam. That to me was a very beautiful concept, and I wanted to know more about it. When I was in college at New York University, I was studying political science, and I saw they had a course called What is Islam? It was taught by a Turkish professor, and he gave me my next lesson in Islam, which basically I had to read the books that he gave us. He gave us a book of the Quran, not the full Quran, but a book called Readings in the Quran by Kenneth Craig. And it had most of the Quran in there and translated into English. And every day in class he would give us certain readings to read. He would give us hadiths to read, and he would tell us the story about the Prophet, peace be upon him, and the other early Muslims, and how Islam became such a force in the world, how it started to be spread throughout the world, and about the Quran and its meaning and the importance of it, and how it was given to humanity as a gift from God. That was for me another very big step, because although I did not accept Islam and take my Shahada right then, I learned a great deal about Islam, and I found Islam to be a very interesting and also something, not only an interesting religion, but something that I felt close to my heart as well. Many times when I felt lost or I was wondering about life, I would read parts of the Quran. Not a lot of it, but just I would turn to it occasionally as a source of help. After that course, I kept on going, not so much in Islam, but I would go to church. I was a Roman Catholic. My grandmother was very religious. She used to take us to church very often. I was baptized in the Roman Catholic Church. I went through my communion, and I also got my confirmation as well. So I was a full adult member of the church, and I used to go once in a while. But when I went to church, I found that there was just something missing. I found that if I wanted to get close to God, I didn't feel like I was achieving that going there. And I kept on going like this for a few more years until about 2 years ago. My uncle, my closest uncle to me, on my mother's side, he passed away. He died actually under tragic circumstances, and the whole family was very hurt, devastated. And I started questioning my life. At that time, I was living a life like a lot of other young people in New York. I used to go out and drink and party and try to get as many girls as I could get and just live as wild and loose and lawless as possible. That was, for me, was the most fun thing that you could want to do. All my friends were doing that. And when my uncle died, it made me stop for a minute and wonder if I was doing the right thing, if this was what life was all about, or if there was more. And I started going to church a little more. I started spending a lot more time with my mother, my grandmother. I had a son at the time as well. I had a son. He's 6 years old now. And I found that I wasn't spending as much time with him as I needed to. I was making excuses. I always had something more important than my family or my son. And I felt that this was a big mistake. But at the same time, I continued on that path. I spent more time with them. But I still, I guess, was not ready, or maybe I was still not able to see that there was a better way. And so I kept on going. I kept on going out with my friends, drinking. I used to smoke a lot of marijuana, I guess you could call it. And I have a lot of friends that used to do that all the time. And we used to try to, get away from the everyday reality. We were so upset with the regular world that we would drink and we would do different drugs just to get away from the regular world. But little by little, I started seeing that this was not something that was benefiting me. I was going to law school at the time. I had finished my degree at New York University, and I found that if I wanted to finish law school, I was not doing it very well. There were many times that I used to question this, and I used to also, wonder whether I was doing the right thing and try to control myself, try to calm myself down, try to find a better path. But I never was able to find it. From time to time, I'd go back to the Quran, but I didn't spend enough time on it. I was too confused. I didn't know where basically to turn. I took some time off from school when my uncle passed away, and I felt I needed to get my mind, my soul, everything in shape, but I still could not find the right way. I kept on going down the same path. I went back to school, but I still was not happy. I still was not getting very good grades. And I had different family members I'd stay with, and they would stay with me on vacations and things like that. I had one cousin who was very close to my age. He came and spent the whole summer with me the year before last. And up until about 3 years ago, 3 months ago, we spoke and we were kind of close. But then he drowned. He was on his job in Belize. He drowned out there, and the whole family again seemed devastated. He was 25 years old. He had just seemed to be starting his life, and his life was over. And we all were wondering why. We couldn't figure out, we couldn't understand what was happening, what was the meaning behind all of these things that were happening to us. Some things were good, some things were bad, but we could not make any sense of anything. We went to his funeral in Belize. The whole family all went. And it was on that trip to Belize that I started looking more and more for a reason. I started looking more and more to God. I started wondering if I could get closer to God, which I never felt I had really been able to get, if things would make more sense. So, let me backtrack for a minute. Before I went to Belize, I had gone on a trip to Canada. I drove all the way from New York all the way to the end of Canada by the Pacific Ocean. It was in total about 7,000 miles. That was over the summertime. And that trip for me, it just gave me a lot of time to be away from New York, to be away from my friends, to be away from a lot of the things in my life that I was doing. And during that trip, I went and I saw my father. He was there on vacation. I saw my brothers that were there going to school. And an interesting thing happened to me. I saw a sign when I was going through the mountains, these beautiful mountains out in the end of Canada in British Columbia. It said, "Get ready to prepare to meet God." That was what the sign said, a big billboard. And it hit me. That sign made me think for 1 minute, made me think, what does that mean? What am I going to meet? Am I going to meet God in these mountains? And as I drove through the mountains, I actually felt like the answer was yes. I felt like driving through these mountains, I felt so at peace. There was so much beauty around me that God had created. I started feeling like God was closer to me. On the way back, when we were almost to New York already, we stopped into a hotel and I saw they had a Bible, a Gideon's Bible, that they often give away in every hotel room. So I started reading it that night. I started looking at it. I started wondering, well, maybe there might be more answers here that I haven't found. I ended up taking the Bible home. I spent the next few weeks, the next few months looking it over, hoping to find more answers. And I found some very good things. I remember reading a lot of the words of Jesus, and a lot of his words made sense to me. A lot of it seemed right. But then I read a lot of other parts that didn't quite seem like they made sense to me. So I kept on looking, and then my cousin in Belize died. I went down to Belize, and I found myself the morning of his funeral, I found myself feeling very, very sad, very depressed, wondering what was going on. First my uncle was gone, now my cousin. He was just like my age. We had spent so much time together. And I'm wondering, well, I could be next, anyone could be next, any of my family members. And what sense does it make? Why were we here? Were we here just to make money? Were we here just to have fun? What were we here for? And I kept looking to the Bible. And the Bible, it helped me a little bit. Whenever I read the words of Jesus, I felt better. But what I did that morning, I just felt so down. I felt I needed help. So I went into my cousin Lauren's bathroom. That was her brother that had died. And I knelt down, which is something that I didn't really do before, because in church you go and you kneel, but you don't bow down. I actually bowed down on the rug. And I started praying to God. I started asking him for help. I started asking him to guide me, to give me some help, so that I wouldn't be lost. I felt like I was lost and just wandering. I felt like I didn't know where I was going. I felt like I didn't know what I should do and what I shouldn't do. I felt I was making a lot of mistakes, and I had no one to tell me or to help me to correct these mistakes. And the more I prayed, the more I started wishing and hoping that God would answer me. I remember feeling a strong feeling, though, some kind of feeling. I can't really describe it other than I felt something important was happening, and I started crying as I was praying. I started begging God, pleading with him to help me to do better, to guide me, basically. And I stayed there and prayed for a long time, so long that everybody was leaving for the funeral. I was supposed to give the eulogy, and they were complaining because I wasn't ready. I hadn't finished everything yet. So when I finished praying, I wiped away my tears. I started feeling a little bit of a better feeling. I felt like this prayer had somehow meant something. It had mattered. And I got up, I got myself together. I picked up the eulogy that he had written together with his mother and other people that had contributed. We went to the church. We carried his body in, and I said the eulogy. It was very hard because I was very hurt emotionally. I had missed my cousin, and I felt that it wasn't fair that he was gone. I felt that life is just something that I just felt lost in life. I felt lost by his death. I felt lost by my life and the way I led it. So I kept on. After the funeral, I gave the eulogy. We went to the cemetery, and again, I kept praying to God. I felt like, for some reason, God was answering me, although I couldn't understand it yet. I read the Bible that said that you must look for the signs. So I started looking. I started opening my eyes. I started looking for the signs that God would answer me. maybe before I was expecting, for him to answer me, in a different way. But I started looking that there were signs around us, things that would tell us what he wanted. And I kept on reading that. But I also had with me the copy of that book with the Quran, readings in the Quran. And I started looking more and more into that. And that started getting my interest a little more. But yet, again, I still kept on going with the Catholic religion. I spent a lot of time talking to my grandma. But I still didn't feel completely comfortable.
Why?
I felt like I wasn't making the connection with God that I wanted. I felt like I wasn't, like the questions I had, the things I was looking for, I feel like they weren't giving me them there. I felt like there was something wrong. There was just something missing. They had the right idea, pray to God, but there was still just something missing along with it, and I was missing something there. I can't really explain it, but the only thing I could say is that when I came to Islam, that's when I understood what was missing. I understood that there's a closer connection to God. There's a daily connection. There's a connection with God that I have every minute, every 5 minutes, every 30 seconds. Remembrance of God. While when I was a Catholic, I didn't feel that. I felt like you have a connection with God. You go see Him on Sunday, and that was it. But now I know that it's more than that. It's not one day a week that you remember God, but it's every day, everything you do, everything, every time you eat, every time you drink, every time you think of anything, you remember God in it. And that is something I found in Islam, and it's given me so much peace, so much happiness. After the funeral, I was in my cousin's room that he used to stay in, and I was sleeping in his bed, the cousin that had died. And I remember waking up around just before dawn, and I remember I started praying again. I started asking God again to help me, to guide me, to tell me what to do. And I started feeling in my heart that there were certain things I needed to do. I needed to change my life, not just a little bit, but a lot. I felt messages coming to me that I needed to stop living in New York, which was very hard for me. I've been living in New York for 24 years. To leave New York and go back to my country, to Belize, that there I could find a more peaceful life. I could find maybe some of that peace I was looking for. Because in New York there was just so many different distractions, so many problems, so many friends that I was relying on that were in fact leading me to the wrong things and not to the right things. So that was something that I felt, one of the messages I received. I also felt that I needed to tell my family that they needed to not be so upset that everything was okay, that my cousin had passed away, he had died, but that somehow it's all alright, that it's all going to work out, and to accept God's plan. I felt like a lot of these messages that I must take more care of my son, that I must watch over him and try to not to spend as much time as possible and not let him, get led astray or let him get carried away from me. So there were many things like that I started feeling that God was answering my prayers. He was telling me. He wasn't telling me in words, but He was telling me in my heart. And I started to understand things a little bit. So I kept reading my Bible. I kept looking at the Quran and not quite understanding it, but looking at it. When I came back to New York, I was already had my mind made up. I was going to be moving back home to Belize. I was going to get my life in shape. I stopped smoking. At that time, I had also given up meat before. I didn't want to eat what I thought was not healthy for me. I was looking for different ways to improve my life and to live my life better. So it just happened that one day I was in Astoria. I have a friend that lives off Steinway Street, and I passed by the store that has Muslim items, that has a lot of Islamic literature, books, clothing, and there was a big sign in front. It said, "Read the Holy Quran." And I looked at the sign, and for some reason I could not pass by without going in. I went in and I asked the brother. I started talking to the brother who was there and asking him about Islam. I told him I had taken a class in Islam, but I wanted him to tell me more. I told him that I wanted to pray and that I wanted to know how, what more about Islam, and if I, and what I could understand about Islam through him. the month of Ramadan had started, and actually when I had heard about Ramadan starting, right away I knew that I wanted to start. I wanted to do something for Ramadan. Ramadan was a time that I had understood that you are like reborn. You cleanse yourself of your sins, and you show God that you want to renew yourself. You want to do better. You want to start over. And that's what I understood it at the time, even though I didn't understand Islam fully. So at the beginning of Ramadan, I had started fasting. I started praying. I did not know how, but I asked a Muslim friend of mine, and he said that the way you could do it is if you wake up, you don't eat anything or drink anything all day between sunrise and sunset. And that he told me I could wake up maybe at 4:30 or something like that. I could have a little small breakfast, and I could pray, and then I could fast for the whole day. And it would be something good that I could do. I didn't really understand how. I didn't know how to pray. So what I did is I bought a Quran, and I looked through different parts of it, and I picked out certain prayers, certain things that people had prayed in the past, and I picked out maybe 10 parts of it, including the opening. And every morning I'd wake up, I'd have my small breakfast, and I would go ahead and read parts of the Quran. For me, that was my salat. I didn't know how to do the proper salat, but I tried my best anyway. And after a little while, I went to the store that had the Quran sign in the front window, and I told the brother about that, what I was doing. And right away he gave me a book called The Prescribed Method to Prayer. And it teaches you the different prayers 5 times a day. It teaches you what to say, what to do, the different positions. It teaches you the wudu, how to cleanse yourself. It teaches you many of the rules and things that you're supposed to do to do correctly, basically, if you're following Islam.
But at this moment, are you embracing Islam yet?
Well, I was embracing it, but I just didn't know
No,
how.
you did embrace it. Meaning you did commit the Shahadatain.
Well, I had done it alone in my home.
I
but
see.
when I spoke to him, he asked me if I wanted to do it with him.
Okay.
And he said if I wanted to, I could either do it there, or I could maybe go into the masjid across the street.
Mm-hmm.
So I told him, well, maybe I should go in there and see how it is, just to make sure first. Because I felt it in my heart, but I didn't really know much about Islam. I only knew from a book, but I did not know in reality what it was. So he told me to go at 4:30, go when I'm ready to break my fast, and meet some of the brothers, and talk and pray. So I got my book, I read a little bit of it, and about 2 days later I went in around 4:30, and they did their prayer just before breaking fast. I got in there and I joined in on the line, and I did not really know what to do. I had just seen it in the book, but I tried to follow as much as I could. I tried to remember as much of the prayers as I could, and I tried to have as much of the intention in my heart as I could, and I felt that was my most important thing I could do. So I did all of that. And then after the prayer was over, everybody lined up and they started eating food. They started handing out food and dishing everybody up. So I got on the line, I got my food, and I still did not know any brothers there. I didn't know. I looked for the guy. I was looking for the brother who was from the store, although I didn't see him. So I got my food and I started looking around for a friendly face. And I sat down with these 2 young brothers, and I had a little bit of a conversation with them. I learned a little bit about it. They told me that I could talk to a few different people. And then, little by little, somebody pointed me in the direction of one of the young brothers from there, an Egyptian brother by the name of Khalid. That first day I was there, he took me under his wing. He started to explain to me as much about Islam as he could. And he was so happy that I was fasting. He was happy that I was praying. He was happy that I was so interested in Islam, and that I basically wanted to commit myself to Islam and dedicate myself to it. And I already knew, basically, from just talking to him and from talking to some of the other brothers. I mean, they took me in like a family member immediately. They talked to me, they helped me in every way possible. They took me down the street to this store where Brother Musa was there. And Brother Musa, to me, was one of the most fabulous people I had ever met, because he was so full of happiness. I mean, like, I could see Allah shining through him. I could see a light shining through him. When he smiled and when he spoke to me, I just felt happy being around him. I felt happy, and I wanted to learn more. I wanted to learn more about Islam, and I wanted to be a part of this. I knew for many years I had been learning about it and wanting to get more information and to get into it a little more, but now I was here and that was it. I was sure that this was what I wanted. I had already felt it in my heart, and to meet the brothers now, this finally just put the icing on the cake. This made me feel as though this is something that I had been looking for all my life, something that I had been missing out on all my life, something that I needed to find. I feel like I wasn't coming to Islam, like I was coming back. I was returning to Islam. I felt like I was supposed to be here from the beginning, and that somehow along the way I got misled. But I felt like I was home again. So I spent time with the brother Musa, I spent time with brother Khalid. There were many other brothers that were very friendly with me. I'd go and eat with them every day, break fast. I would go and pray the night prayers. I would go and spend as much time as I could there. And little by little I started just feeling happy, content. I felt like I had no more worries, no more problems. I felt like I had come to a point in my life where I had never been before, where I finally found just a feeling of peace, a feeling of peace that I could not find no matter where I looked, whether I looked in money or in women or in any different thing that of this earthly world. I felt like nothing could ever make me feel this happiness and this peace until I found Islam. And that's when I found this peace. And now, here I am. I want to learn more, as much about Islam as I can. I want to be the best Muslim that I can be. Inshallah, I want to do the best I can, and I keep praying every day. One of the prayers that I love to pray the most is when I ask God to please to keep me on the straight path, keep me on the right path. I ask Him this over and over. Sometimes I repeat it many, many times, because the one thing I don't want to slip. I don't want to fall. I don't want to go away from what I have found. I want to be with God. I want to be close to God. I know, of course, that in the next life, when God resurrects us and He promises us paradise for those of us who are good, I would love to be a part of that as well. But I know that it is reward enough here just to be a part of Islam and to be with God and to serve God here. For me, I feel like that's what I needed to be doing for the beginning. And I'm so happy that now, at 28, some people might think it's early, some people might think it's late. I finally found what I needed to be doing, and I'm very, very happy.
What is your goal in life now?
My goal in life, the main thing is to, of course, to stay on the right path, to stay with God, to stay with Allah, to serve Allah, to open the eyes of the other people who were blind, who were living the same crazy life I was, or who were maybe not so bad, maybe worse. I want to tell them about it, and I know not all of them can see it, but if I tell some people and I explain to some people, maybe they can see it. Maybe it might take them many years, like it took me. It might take them 1 year or 5 or 10 or 15 years. But at least if I tell them a little about Islam, maybe God, if God's willing, inshallah, He will shine His light on them too. And that's what I would love to do. In my country, I don't know about any Islamic community in my country. But I'm going to look for it when I arrive in Belize. And if there's not very much of one, I'll help build it up. I'll help talk to my family. I'll help talk to my friends. I would like to introduce them to the truth. Because when the truth arrives, falsehood must perish, you know. So I'm very happy about that. I feel the truth is the most powerful tool you could ever have. And to know the truth about God, and that He gave us this truth. He gave us the Quran. He gave us, our Prophet Rasulullah, peace be upon him.
You know, some people can ask you, how you know it is the truth?
I know it's the truth because I feel it in my heart. That's the only way you can know the truth, and that's the way I feel I know it. I feel if somebody tells me something, that is not true, especially about Allah, about God, you will not feel it the same way. You will not feel it but when somebody tells you the truth, when you learn about God and you learn the true path, your heart will just feel warm. Your heart will feel happy. Your heart will feel good and full of love. And that is what I feel. And that's why I know that I cannot be making any mistake with this.
Let me explain something in here, because a lot of people misunderstand that. What is the truth? According to Quran and the teaching of Islam, one of the attributes of Allah is the truth. Allah is the truth.